Forget everything you think you know about heating your home. Right now, while suburban furnaces fail during polar vortexes, black homeless women running camps in Chicago and Detroit are keeping their people warm at negative 30 degrees. No electricity, no gas bill. Engineers are actually studying their methods. The techniques they are using have been passed down through generations of survival. Depression era. Wisdom meets street-level physics. And the first method costs absolutely nothing. Zero fuel, zero fire risk. Just basic biology that your body's already doing right now. This is knowledge that keeps people alive when nothing else works. Here's the thing. Nobody talks about, when it comes to surviving extreme cold, the most reliable heating system homeless women use costs absolutely nothing. $0, zero fuel, zero risk of fire. It's other people. Your body pumps out roughly 100 watts of heat constantly. That's basically an old school light bulb running 24 hours a day without stopping. Now put 3 or 4 people together in a tight space, and you've got yourself a 400-watt heater that never runs out of batteries. Black women running camps in Chicago figured this out decades ago. When polar vortexes hit and power grids fail, these camps stay warm while suburban houses freeze solid. Makes sense, right? Shelter temperatures jump 15 to 25 degrees just from combined body heat. No candles, no chemical packets, just basic biology doing its job. Antarctic explorers figured this out over a century ago. Homeless communities discovered the exact same principle independently through necessity. When it's negative 30 outside, nobody cares about personal space. You share warmth or you freeze. Simple as that. My grandmother used to say the same thing about church pews in winter. Sit close and share the blessing. She wasn't talking about religion, though. She was talking about not catching pneumonia in that drafty old building. But the buddy system does more than generate warmth. In these camps, someone always stays awake. Someone watches for danger. Someone makes sure trouble doesn't catch everyone sleeping. People rotate through shifts naturally. The eldest women usually organize the schedule themselves. They've survived enough winters to know what works and what doesn't. Research on disaster survivors backs this up with hard numbers. Clustered sleeping reduces hypothermia deaths by roughly 40% compared to people sleeping alone. 40%. That's not a small difference. That's the difference between waking up and not waking up the next morning. And here is something that might surprise you. Dogs aren't just companions in these camps. They are basically furry space heaters on 4 legs. A dog's body runs at 101 degrees Fahrenheit. That is warmer than you. Camps actively welcome dogs for this exact reason. 3 women, 2 dogs, a shared blanket. That's survival. But body heat has limits. It only works in tight spaces, and you can't exactly huddle forever. Speaking of clever solutions, some folks figured out how to trap heat instead of just sharing it. The material they use is something Amazon delivers to your door every single week. Cardboard. The stuff most people throw away without a second thought. It turns out it is one of the best insulators available for free. Those wavy ridges inside corrugated cardboard trap air. Trapped air is basically nature's thermal underwear. Same principle as a down jacket, just way less fashionable. 3 layers of flattened boxes under a sleeping bag can raise perceived temperature by 10 to 15 degrees. That is meaningful warmth from garbage. But not all cardboard is created equal. Refrigerator boxes are gold in these camps. Appliance boxes from washing machines, dryers, dishwashers. These are the luxury items of street insulation. Thicker walls, better heat retention. I have heard stories of women guarding a good fridge box like it is a winning lottery ticket. Now here is something most people do not realize. Camps near grocery stores operate on delivery schedules. Tuesday morning, Whole Foods gets their truck. That is when you grab the fresh, dry stuff. Timing matters more than you might think because the enemy is moisture. Wet cardboard loses its insulating power almost immediately. Worse, it grows mold within days. Sleeping on mold means respiratory problems nobody needs. So the veterans, the women who have survived 10 or 15 winters outside, invented something clever. Cardboard sandwiches, plastic sheeting layered between cardboard sheets, blocks ground moisture from wicking up. Simple, effective, completely free. The strange part is how sophisticated this gets. Some women build entire modular systems, walls, floors, ceilings, all cardboard, all engineered to maximize dead air space. But cardboard has limits. It can only trap heat. It cannot reflect it. And that is where the next method gets interesting. Mylar blankets. You know those crinkly silver sheets that marathon runners wrap themselves in at the finish line? They weigh less than 2 ounces, basically nothing at all. But these flimsy sheets reflect up to 90% of your body heat right back at you. It is like having a mirror that shows your warmth where to go. Now here is where it gets clever. Some women do not just wrap themselves in Mylar, they line their cardboard walls with it. Suddenly, that sad little box becomes a radiant heat chamber. Your body warms the air and the Mylar bounces it back. You are basically slow cooking yourself, in a good way, but there is a catch. There is always a catch, right? Condensation. Your body releases moisture all night long. That moisture hits the Mylar, cannot escape, and now you are wet. And wet in cold weather is worse than just being cold. Way worse. The fix is simple, but most people do not know it. Leave a small gap for ventilation. Let the moisture escape while keeping most of your heat trapped. Now, where do people even get these things? Hospitals throw away thousands of them every single week. Single patient use, then straight to the trash. Medical waste streams have become accidental supply lines for survival. Speaking of generating heat rather than just trapping it, here is where things get a little more interesting. Take a basic terracotta flower pot, the kind your grandmother uses for her petunias. Flip it upside down over a few tea light candles. What you have created is a radiant heater that can bump a small shelter's temperature by 10 to 20 degrees. The clay absorbs heat from the flame, then releases it slowly as infrared radiation. It is the same principle behind those fancy ceramic heaters that cost $200. This version costs about $3. Here is the science. Tea lights burn at around 1000 degrees at the flame tip. Most of that heat normally rises straight up and disappears, but the pot captures it, stores it, and radiates it outward in all directions. Dollar stores sell tea lights at roughly $25 for a single dollar. That is cheap heat by any standard. You need 4 to 6 candles burning together to generate real warmth, but even then, you are looking at maybe 10 cents per hour. Veterans of these camps figured out a trick. They cracked the pot slightly on purpose, just a small fracture. This creates air flow that prevents the candles from suffocating themselves on their own carbon dioxide. Without that crack, the flame starves and dies within minutes. But let us talk about the obvious problem: fire risk. These candles cannot be left burning while you sleep. One tip over and your cardboard shelter becomes a cardboard inferno. Which brings us to something completely fireproof, something that has been holding heat since before humans discovered fire itself: rocks. Dense stones heated in a fire hold warmth for 6 to 8 hours. They are basically nature's rechargeable batteries. They have been around since cavemen figured out the whole not freezing to death thing. Here is the critical part. Not all rocks work safely with fire. River rocks, avoid them like your ex at the grocery store. Those smooth beauties contain moisture pockets inside. Heat that water up and you get explosive fracturing, with shrapnel flying through your shelter. Nobody wants a geology lesson delivered at high velocity to the face. The stones you want are dense, completely dry, and roughly potato-sized. Small enough to handle without burning yourself, large enough to store meaningful heat. Granite works beautifully. So does basalt. These dense volcanic rocks hold temperature like they are personally offended by cold. Sandstone and limestone, forget it. They cool faster than your coffee on a December morning. Now the technique itself is medieval, literally. People have been wrapping heated rocks in cloth and tucking them at the foot of their beds since the 1200s. Some things just work. Longtime camp leaders actually maintain what they call rock gardens near their fire pits, stones specifically selected and tested for heat retention. It is surprisingly scientific when you think about it. The beauty here is zero ongoing fuel cost. Heat your rocks during the evening while you are awake anyway, then let them work all night. But rocks cool eventually. You cannot exactly reheat them at 3 in the morning. What if the heat source worked all by itself? Here's a fact that surprises most people. Dig down past the frost line and the Earth stays around 55 degrees year-round. It does not matter if it is blazing summer or brutal winter up top. The ground keeps its warmth. Homeless populations figured this out decades ago. Las Vegas has an entire community living beneath the Strip, literally. While tourists gamble overhead, an estimated 1,000 people once called those flood tunnels home. They set up furniture, hung artwork, built actual neighborhoods down there. No heating required. New York has its mole people. Moscow has tunnel dwellers dating back to Soviet times. These are not random hiding spots. They are established communities with their own social structures. And here is what makes underground living so effective. Zero fuel input, none. The Earth itself acts like a massive thermal battery, absorbing summer heat and releasing it through winter. But there is a catch. There always is. Flash floods. Those Las Vegas tunnels are storm drains. When monsoon season hits, water rushes through with almost no warning. People have died down there. Documented deaths from drowning in places that were bone dry an hour before. Speaking of stacking advantages, the sun is free, and women in these camps figured out how to bottle it. Black plastic bags filled with water and left in direct sunlight can hit temperatures above 100 degrees by late afternoon. That is hot enough to feel uncomfortable holding. Stuff a few of those water-filled bags inside your shelter before sunset, and you have a poor woman's radiator. Here is why this actually works. Water holds heat like nothing else. A single gallon heated to 100 degrees contains enough thermal energy to warm a small shelter for several hours. It is basically a hot water bottle your grandmother used, except the sun did all the work. And those reflective car windshield shades everyone throws away in summer. Position them so they bounce extra sunlight onto your water bags. You just accelerated heating by 30% or more. Free technology sitting in dumpsters everywhere. Now here is the catch nobody mentions. Cloudy days destroy this entire system. One overcast afternoon and you have cold water bags instead of warm ones. That is why experienced folks never rely on solar alone. They stack every advantage they can. Here is something your grandmother probably knew that most people have forgotten. Crumpled newspaper stuffed inside your jacket works almost as well as a light sweater. Homeless veterans call this technique bumming up. The science is simple. Paper trap air, air insulates, that is it. Layering newspapers between blankets creates dead air pockets that seriously reduce heat loss. It is the same principle that makes double pane windows work, but this version costs exactly $0. This is not some modern survival hack. Depression era. Women were doing this back in the 1930s. They called newspaper insulation California blankets. It is dark humor when you think about it, but that is how people coped. My grandmother taught my mother taught me. 3 generations of the same simple trick. And finally, wind blocking. At 35 degrees with a 20 miles per hour breeze, your body loses heat as if it were actually 15 degrees outside. That is a 20-degree penalty just from moving air. A single sheet of plastic wrapped around a shelter stops convective heat loss almost completely. Clear plastic beats opaque every time because of the greenhouse effect. Sunlight passes through, heats whatever is inside, and that warmth gets trapped. The real veterans position their shelter entrance away from prevailing winds. Then they build L-shaped windbreak walls using additional tarps or debris. One church worker told me that homeless women sometimes layer 3 different barriers: ground tarp, shelter walls, outer windbreak. Each layer adds protection. All this knowledge is passed down through necessity. Grandmother to granddaughter, survivor to survivor, wisdom that keeps people alive when the power grid fails and the furnaces go cold and dark. And that is really the point of all this. While most Americans panic when the heat goes out, these women have built systems that work without any external infrastructure at all. No power company, no gas line, no monthly utility bill. Just knowledge, resourcefulness, and community. The same principles that kept their grandmothers warm during the Great Depression, the same techniques that Antarctic explorers rediscovered independently, the same physics that engineers are now trying to incorporate into emergency preparedness protocols. These women did not learn survival from YouTube videos or prepper blogs. They learned it the hard way, through winters that would kill people who were not paying attention, through trial and error measured in frostbite and close calls, through watching elders who had figured out which methods actually work when the temperature drops and stays there for weeks. What is remarkable is not just the ingenuity, it is the generosity. These camps do not turn people away. New arrivals get taught the basics immediately: how to layer cardboard properly, where to find dry materials, which rocks explode and which ones do not, the rotation schedule for night watch. It is survival knowledge shared freely because hoarding it helps nobody. My grandmother would have recognized these women. She came up during hard times too. She knew that community is not just about feeling good, it is about staying alive. She used to say the coldest nights are when you find out who your real neighbors are. These women prove that point every single winter. So the next time your furnace breaks down during a cold snap, remember this: everything you need to stay warm is probably already within reach. Cardboard, plastic, newspaper, rocks, sunlight, and most importantly, other people willing to share warmth. The knowledge exists. It has been tested and refined over generations by people who had no other choice. You just have to know where to look for it. And now you do, because these women have been teaching it to anyone willing to listen for decades. The only question is whether you will remember it when you actually need it most, because sooner or later, everyone needs it. That is exactly how winter works in this world.